comments. I sort of took the approach, instead of responding, individually by typing every single person's comments, that I would just start to, read through the comments and sort of respond to some of the better, or, more frequent arguments, at least for the globe, and try to cover that stuff in the videos by default. It's gotten to the point to where I just can't keep on top of all the comments. I wish I could. I do sort of miss it, but it's like it's just, it'll drive you crazy because if you try to stay on this stuff, it's a full-time job in and of itself. I got a lot of complaints from people that say that I delete their comments. I actually don't, unless you're just being a real asshole. But at least, for example, so it used to be net. Well, yeah, I put some filters in here just so you guys know. So you can't just go cussing people out, at least not on my videos, hopefully, or at least some of that's filtered out. But actually, Google catches a lot of this stuff. And yeah, here, you're a fucking moron. Yeah. We can see the same constellations for all of history. There's no possible way to have one consistent constellation for this amount of time. That would be in the heliocentric model. So if you think about the Earth spinning around the sun spinning around the galactic center, and the galactic center hauling ass through space at over 1,000,000 miles an hour, um, you, the stars are not all supposedly the same distance away. Some are 4 light years, some are 4,000 light years, some are much more than that. But that's sort of the range of visible stars from the ground is, I believe, 4 to 4,000 light years or something like that. It's irrelevant because those distances are all theoretical. But the point is if we were actually traveling through space and spinning around like they say, there should be some parallax over time, and you certainly shouldn't see any of the same constellations from winter to summer, which I'll try to demonstrate. But this is sort of typical. This is this type of guy here. Owahi is the one that I'm sort of dedicating this video to. Is this type of person, not necessarily that guy or whatever. Um, Oh, and typically what I do is I just approve everything, just so you guys know. But there's some kind of glitch in it where you have to keep going back and forth. So let's see. So one has a lot of evidence to debunk to show the Earth is flat. Here is third-party evidence of our moon landings. Try starting here in your efforts to debunk. Third-party evidence comes from folk with no horse in the race, nothing to gain. So let's just see. Let's just read. Third-party evidence for Apollo moon landings. Third-party evidence for Apollo moon landings is evidence or analysis of evidence about moon landings that does not come from either NASA or the U.S. government, the first party, or the Apollo moon landings hoax theorists, the second party. This evidence serves as independent confirmation of NASA's account of the moon landings. So they sort of tell you right off the bat that they're in this to confirm what NASA's telling you. So if we're to take the presupposition that everything NASA is telling us is true, then why bother with the scientific method? Why bother with thinking at all? Why not just let NASA do all that for us and just allow them to tell us all sorts of things are true? Tell us the Easter Bunny's true. Okay, so I'm going off on a tangent, but okay, so here's a nice picture, and I believe this would be one where they're using the Stanley Kubrick technique, right? Backlit stage set or whatever. I don't know. Either that or let's click on this picture. Let's make it bigger. No dust on the landing pads, picture perfect lighting, as if they had a Hollywood director there on the moon with them too, huh? It's just so ridiculous that people just line around to defend NASA no matter what because they just happen to believe that NASA is always 100% truthful, which obviously they're totally the opposite of that. It's one thing I already don't like about this is the lighting. They supposedly didn't bring any of their own lighting. It was all supposedly lit by the sun, which, by the way, their suits should have turned into gas or liquid. But who's counting? We'll give them the benefit of the doubt and we'll say that this was taken from the moon automatically because they said it was. Um, I'm curious to see if we can find any of these cross hashes behind anything in any of these pictures, because as you can see, these little they're basically like guidelines to for reference. It's like a frame of reference for the people cataloging these alleged photographs from the moon. But what you'll find in a lot of them is that these crosshatches actually land behind objects that were obviously placed into the foreground. So we don't see any of that here, which tells me absolutely nothing, except they didn't make that mistake here, um, which is obviously the reason why they're looking at these types of images. But you can see the angles of these shadows are wrong. They're coming from a light source that's very close. They're lit up. One thing that I'll tell you about photography that a lot of people don't know is that if you shoot things realistically, uh, they don't come out realistic. You have to put a lot of fluff and makeup on people, and you have to do a lot of set design and lighting to get things to look realistic in a photograph. And to get this image to look like it was really shot on the moon in a photograph is not that hard to do. Um, just because we have photographic evidence of people that say this is from the moon really doesn't prove anything. It just proves that you're going to believe what NASA tells you no matter what. And again, the presupposition of this whole entire article that we're looking at is they're going to confirm NASA's account of the moon landings. So that's their mission. They tell you right off the bat, which tells me everything else that you're going to read in here is going to be NASA pro NASA propaganda. And you don't even have to have a propaganda campaign for people to do this. They do this naturally. People love NASA. People consider NASA as American as apple pie, and they're defending their belief system. And so that's the beauty of true propaganda, is that you don't even have to keep repeating it once it's caught on to a critical mass. Um, People are just going to start defending the lies because that's what they believe. It's a belief system. So just scanning through some of this, and like as if I have time to read, every single article, and I'd love to. I wish I did. You don't. But I'll keep reading. In this section are only those observations that are completely independent of NASA. No NASA facilities were used, and there were no NASA funding. Each of the countries mentioned in this section, and by the way, when people tell you there is no NASA funding here, you can't believe them. They'll actually lie to you about that. Okay, so each of these countries mentioned in this section, Soviet Union, Japan, China, and India, has its own space program, builds its own space probes, which are launched on their own launch vehicles, and has its own deep space communication network. Okay. For starters, we know that Japan, China, India, and the Soviet Union are all lying because the Earth is a stationary plane and you have no reason for satellites, no reason for space programs, absolutely no reason to even, no, GPS can be done from ground based systems. Cell phones are done from ground based systems. Weather radar is done from Doppler based ground based systems. Um, High speed internet, ground based systems. They even run fiber optic cables across to the different continents because there is no such thing as satellites. Um, Long range navigation using the Loran system is certainly possible, but that's just bouncing radio waves across the ionosphere and across the plane. Um, but, not to get off too much on a tangent here, all those countries, they're lying. They don't they saw how well the Apollo missions did in terms of keeping the American people totally distracted, totally looking in the wrong direction. And they've repeated it. China went to the moon now too, of course. So, okay, anyway, saline photographs. In 2008, the Japan Aerospace, and again, Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, these are government agencies, so they have to be telling the truth because they're a government agency. I mean, that is the most naive, ridiculous position that anyone can take. Selene lunar probe obtained several photographs showing evidence of moon landings. Oh, no kidding. On the left are two photos taken on the lunar surface by the Apollo 15 astronauts, Okay, wait a minute. I thought we weren't going to look at anything from NASA. So we're gonna take more pages from NASA to prove images from NASA. Okay, see that's why I just don't even. Who has the time to read this circular argumentative bull? Okay, so we'll look at the pictures. So this image from NASA proves that NASA went to the moon? Okay. Okay. Whatever. Alexis Richardson. One has to wonder what the education level the maker of this video has. I'm guessing not a lot. Hell, he doesn't even believe in gravity. I hope he believes that and tries to debunk gravity by jumping off a building. As if I've never heard that one before. Not very creative. Must be taking that from the shill playbook. But that's okay. Okay, so no, gravity doesn't exist in the Einsteinian understanding that you think it does, whether you understand that or not. The Einsteinian explanation of gravity is that the mass of the Earth is curving space-time or warping space-time into a curve instead of its rectilinear natural state, and this is what causes the moon to orbit the Earth. The gravity of the sun is supposedly what causes the Earth to orbit the sun. The gravity of the galactic center is supposedly what causes the entire system to orbit the galaxy. And then who knows what, oh, that's right. The Big Bang theory is what causes the entire galaxy to fly through space at 1,000,000 miles an hour. So you actually believe all of that motion exists when it doesn't, and yet I'm supposed to explain why things that you throw up in the air come back down. It's ridiculous. Gravity, as you understand it, does not exist. Now, what goes up is obviously going to come back down because me, for example, if I jump off a building, which I would never do, but if I were to do that, then obviously I'm going to fall to the ground because I am a similar density to the ground. So it's all about the laws of density and buoyancy, has nothing to do with gravity as a warping of space-time. So hopefully you can take your foot out of your mouth for that. Okay, Eric Dubé is better than Sargent. See this video? Yeah, I've seen lots of Eric stuff. I would agree that Eric Dubé stuff is better than Sargent stuff, but that's just a personal preference. I don't, whatever, but I do agree. Okay, so that doesn't necessarily mean that I agree with Eric on everything. So just saying that too. Mr. Puniverse, you bet they're on the moon. And how long does this video go for? That one, I don't know. Probably like an hour. They usually go for a half hour, hour, something like that. And there's a link, and I wish I had time to follow through with all these links, and I'm sorry that I just don't. Um, Okay, just reading through. Ariel Carry On. I'm hoping that all the leaders who post flat Earth videos on YouTube can come together and put up a common website where we can all submit our names, country of origin, so that we can signify our support for the truth and be counted. It would be very encouraging to know our vast and growing number. For starters, you can sign my petition to abolish the Antarctic Treaty. Website that I recommend is Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole. I don't know if it necessarily has that sort of thing, but I used to recommend IFERS. I was banned from there for no reason, so I don't really recommend it anymore. But um, just got spammed a little bit from her. Two things. I'm new to this flat Earth theory, but it has some really hard evidence that is swaying me to believe that the Earth is indeed flat. Well, right on, brother. I've shared this with a few people, and one question that came up that I had no answer for. I tried Googling it, but couldn't find the answer. Haley's Comet, where does it go for 76 years in the flat Earth picture? If you have a link or could explain, I would appreciate it. Thanks. Just came across this story on gravity. Any comments? So let's take a look at that. And to sort of start answering that first question, that's a good question. I think it makes a whole lot more sense in a stationary model than it does in a heliocentric model. And just think about it for a second. If the sun is actually rotating, uh, rotating the galactic center, and doing so at over 500,000 miles an hour, I believe, consistent constellation for this amount of time. That would be in the heliocentric model. So if you think about the Earth spinning around the sun spinning around the galactic center, and the galactic center hauling ass through space at over a million miles an hour, um, you, the stars are not all supposedly the same distance away. Some are four. There's I put some filters in here just so you guys know. Um, so you can't just go cussing people out, at least not on my videos, hopefully, or at least some of that's filtered out. But actually, Google catches a lot of this stuff. And yeah, here, you're a fucking moron. Yeah. We can see the same constellations for all of history. There's no possible way to have one comments. I sort of took the approach instead of responding, individually by typing every single person's comments, that I would just start to, read through the comments and sort of respond to some of the better or, more frequent arguments, at least for the globe, and try to cover that stuff in the videos by default. It's gotten to the point to where I just can't keep on top of all the comments. I wish I could. I do sort of miss it, but it's like it's just it'll drive you crazy because if you try to stay on this stuff, um, it's a full time job in and of itself. I got a lot of complaints from people that say that I delete their comments. I actually don't, unless you're just being a real asshole. But at least, for example, so it used to be net well, yeah, light years. Some are 4,000 light years. Some are much more than that. But that's sort of the range of visible stars from the ground is, I believe, 4 to 4,000 light years or something like that. It's irrelevant because those distances are all theoretical. But the point is if we were actually traveling through space and spinning around like they say, there should be some parallax